Mortgage 101, your guide to homeownership, as mentioned. And Clinton Wilkins, for those who don't know I can't imagine people don't know about you, but let them know about what you are all about for people tuning in for the first time, what you do.
I'm a mortgage broker here in Halifax. We have offices in downtown Halifax and in downtown Dartmouth, and I've been in the mortgage industry for 16 years. Recently, we just passed a big milestone.
Yeah, $1 billion.
$1 billion in mortgage volume funded, and you know what? It's been a real ride. As you can imagine, there's been a lot of changes that have happened in the mortgage industry in the last 16 years since I started. Yep. And there's nothing that I would rather do with my life currently. I haven't always been here. I haven't always been in like this mindset of, things are good and I'm happy. But right now, you know what? There's nothing else that I would rather do than this. And, the only thing that I really talk about all day long is mortgage lending. Yeah. And that's why you're going to hear for the next hour. So hopefully.
When you're talking $1 billion, you're talking about total deals, total mortgages, like combined. That's what you're talking
combined about. $1 billion. And we started tracking that from 2009 onward. So that's basically our 2009 results to today. And we passed the $1 billion mark sometime in early February. Yeah. Which is, a big milestone. As you can imagine, in Halifax, our average mortgage amounts are probably one of the lower, amounts from the entire country. Yeah. Even now, even with what's happening in the marketplace out there.
It's for the major cities you're talking.
For the major cities. Yeah. So as you can imagine, we have to do a lot of transactions to be able to compete on the national level. And, we've been able to do that. I've been awarded Broker of the Year 3 times.
For who?
For more under the Canadian Mortgage Awards.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's very prestigious?
Yeah, and I'm actually nominated this year. I'm a finalist, and they're now doing it for different regions. So I'm nominated for Atlantic Canada, and we'll be in Toronto for the Canadian Mortgage Awards here in April. So super excited for that.
So what's been the biggest challenge getting the business to where it is today? What are some of the biggest challenges?
Well, I think just like any small business, Todd, there's good times and there's bad times. And, I've made some good decisions. I've made some bad decisions. And, here we are today. There have been times that I've wanted to quit. Yeah. I won't lie to you. I think in Halifax, the economic situation wasn't as hot maybe, the 2012, 13, 14. It was kind of like a bit stagnant
little
here.
Rough, yeah.
And, I was probably, living that good life and wanting to go on vacation, drive my fancy cars and all these things. And
what's changed?
What's changed is I kind of went back to work. Yeah. I think at one point I was kind of like just skimming the cream off the top. Yeah. And, I wasn't really putting the, sweat equity into it, or the muscle into actually running the business and seeing clients. And I actually see clients full time. And I think that surprises people. I think some of the clients of our business, they perceive that, I do things like the radio and, I wrote a book and we do a homeownership guide and, other media things that we do. And they think that that's what I do full time, right. And manage the business operations and stuff like that. But I actually do see clients. Yeah. And I think that provides the most value to our business here, but also to our consumers because I'm in the thick of it. And it's not just the other mortgage brokers who work here on my team. I'm doing transactions every single day, so I can see what the challenges are. And, we've done over 4,200 transactions since that 2009 date. I want to say that we've seen everything, but every day I see something new.
No, you don't.
I honestly do. Yeah. Everybody's situation's different. Every file that we look at is like a snowflake. It's made up of a combination of income and assets and credit, and we need to figure out what the best path is for that consumer. It's really, I find it very empowering. I love what I do. Yep. We make dreams happen. We get first-time home buyers into homes. We put people in a better financial position, potentially with a refinance. Yeah. And a lot of the transactions that we do every day are for existing clients, repeat clients, and referrals from those existing clients, obviously. So obviously, we love helping new clients, Todd, and we're in the business, obviously, of mortgage lending. We want to do every single transaction that we can do. Obviously we have capacity and we can't help everyone. I mean, I assume everyone understands that.
What do you mean you have capacity? Can't help everyone?
Well, we can't do every single transaction. There's thousands of transactions that are happening every year, and even in the province of Nova Scotia.
Well, you do anybody who comes to you and wants you to do a transaction, you're going to make that happen.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. Obviously, we have some constraints or some transactions that we just are not able to do, and some transaction types that we don't do maybe as often. But for the lion's share of the customers that come in to see us, we want to do every single transaction that we can, and we want to provide those consumers with the best advice. And quite honestly, we will not do transactions when we don't think it's in the client's best interest.
Yeah. Give me an example.
I'm going to give you an example. I actually had a transaction this week, and I had an approval for this client. Mm-hmm. Some of the situation changed. They wanted to change, the mortgage amount, the closing date, and based on their current scenario, they had an approval at another lender. The other lender was actually able to provide a lower rate because they got the approval before my file started. And obviously we know pricing changes from time to time. Yeah. And I recommended that client go back to that existing lender. I would have loved to have the transaction. Mm-hmm. It would have made my life a little bit easier, honestly. But it wasn't the right thing for the customer. Yeah. And I would rather give advice like that. If the client likes it or doesn't like it, I'd rather give the client that advice than just do transactions for the sake of doing transactions, because that's not a sustainable business model, and it's not a business model that we want to be in.
Right.
We want to be able to give the advice. And I think that's what really kind of differentiates us in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. But I think also it differentiates us from going to see a bank lender. The bank lenders are only able to give what they have access to.
Right.
We have access to a variety of different products, a variety of different lenders. And, we can look at the entire situation and kind of figure out what the best path is.
How rare do you think that is in your business that your competitors, and I'm not looking for you to name anybody or anything like that, but it's obviously quite rare that somebody would say, look, you're getting a better deal, you should go for that better deal?
I would say it's quite rare. Yeah. And, there's a couple, obviously, things that could come into play here. There are some ultra discounted brokerages out there that are like you're dealing with online and like a call center, right?
Yeah.
So, I think sometimes they may have that buying power to provide a lower rate. And if it's all about rate, that's probably where the customer should go, to be honest. We really pride ourselves on being that full service brokerage that we're going to be able to give that advice. We have brick and mortar locations. Like, we are in an old bank branch here in downtown Halifax. We're actually recording here Wednesday night. Yeah. So you're listening to us on the weekend, but it's Wednesday night and we're recording. We're actually in my office in downtown Halifax. And, we believe in brick and mortar. I think we run our business kind of like it is a bank branch in some ways. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we're not a bank. We're not owned by a bank. We're independent. We're part of a national brokerage. And we've access to a variety of lenders. But what really sets us apart, I think, is the lenders that we have a very deep and entrenched relationship with them. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, oftentimes can enable us to, dig a little bit deeper maybe on the pricing piece. So, give a very competitive rate, but also get that service. And we likely are able to get, maybe, an exception that maybe somebody can't get. Mm-hmm. I think when you have a lot of volume behind you, like kind of like what we have, the lenders that we deal with, if we need to go to the table and really ask maybe for help or for an exception, we're probably more likely to get it, Yeah. And, I think it's kind of like the Costco analogy. Where is it better to buy your toilet paper? Is it better to buy it at Costco? Is it better to buy it at the grocery store, or is it better to buy it at the corner store? And in some ways, due to our volume, we have the buying power of something like a Costco or the grocery store would be.
So in the show today, we're going to talk about what do you want to get to next? Refinance? Do you think that would be? And what else do you want to talk about?
I think
spring around the corner, right?
It's spring, and we kind of coin it as spring into home ownership. Spring is literally 2 weeks away here, Todd. Yeah. So we're pretty excited about spring. Spring is typically one of the busiest housing markets across the country. Mm-hmm. So, we want to talk a little bit about what's going on, here in Halifax and, some of the challenges.
Right.
I certainly want to talk about refinance, and for existing homeowners, spring might be a good time to refinance, and we can talk a little bit about that. And I think we would be remiss to say, about what's happened with the Bank of Canada last week.
Yeah, let's do that. So we'll be right back. Clinton Wilkins and myself, Todd Veinotte, Mortgage 101 returns in a bit.